Hey guys, my name is Rob, and today we're unboxing and reviewing the Ether controller from MOJHON, who was formerly BigBig Won. BigBig Won recently rebranded to MOJHON, but it's the same company we all know who developed the Blitz and Rainbow controller lines, the Gale controller, and a number of others. The Ether is a brand new offering, and it's a wireless controller compatible with PC, Switch, and mobile. This is a gamepad targeted at the budget market, and when I say budget, I mean very cost effective. It's scheduled to launch in the US on April 15th with an MSRP of $29.99, but Mojon has informed me that there will be a limited time sale at launch, so it will actually be available for $25.49 during the launch window, which is an insane price for a modern pro style controller. So let's open this thing up and see what we get for that price. A quick disclaimer, this controller was sent to me for review, so thank you to Mojon for that. That said, I wasn't paid for this review, and they only asked that I provide an honest and comprehensive review. They didn't specifically tell me to say or not say anything, and they didn't get a preview of this video before it was published. In the box, we have a support card, and if you scan this QR code, it does take you to the website where you can download the user manual, as a physical manual is not included, which is fine with me. I typically download a digital manual for every controller I review anyway because they're just easier to read. Aside from that, we have a 2.4 gigahertz USB dongle for wireless connectivity, and then we have the controller itself, which looks pretty nice. I like the white and gray, and the orange color splash stands out nicely. You'll probably notice that there's not a USB-C cable included, which I assume is part of the budget-friendly strategy, but honestly, I'm kind of glad because I have way too many USB-C cables laying around. But your mileage on that may vary if you don't spend way too much time and money on your controller collection like I do. As far as features go, we have Hall effect sticks. These aren't TMRs like we saw in the Blitz 2, but a $30 Pro controller with Hall effect sticks and no concerns about drift is still pretty impressive. The face buttons are membrane, which isn't my favorite, but I will say they feel good. They're pretty tight, not a lot of wiggle room or squishiness here, so not a deal breaker for me. They require a little more pressure than some membrane buttons. I prefer this, that's why they don't feel super squishy. The D-pad is tactile but has a silicone pad for comfort, so it's mechanical but with a softer feel. We'll test this out later and see how it performs. Then we have the menu button, the view button, the home button, and the function button. We also have a built-in screen used for settings and customization, and we'll go through the operation of this in a few minutes. On top, we have the shoulder buttons, which feel great. Similar comment as the face buttons, they feel tight, no wiggle or looseness in any direction, and they take the same amount of force or pressure to actuate anywhere along the button. The triggers are also Hall effect, and they feel fine, but this will be my first major complaint about this controller: no trigger stops. Again, this is a budget controller, which I understand, but I'm pretty dependent on trigger stops at this point. So much so that you guys have probably seen some videos in the past where I've modified controllers to add trigger stops, so definitely a feature I want on any and all controllers. Lastly, on the back, we have the two rear buttons, and these are micro switch buttons and feel really good. They're positioned well and are super easy to press, but of course I do wish they went with a 4-button layout like on the Gale controller, or a 2+2 layout like on the Blitz line. Generally, just as a preference thing, I'm not a huge fan of screens on controllers, but I've played around with this one a bit, and I appreciate that it's focused on functionality. It's very simple and easy to navigate, and it's also small and it shuts off when inactive, so it's not a distraction. The home screen shows the connection mode, connection status, and the battery level. Then, if you click Function, you can access the settings. The first tab is for configuration, which has a few options. You can adjust the dead zones, which is very important, and you'll notice it says A for yes and B for back. If you change something here and then click B, it doesn't save the changes, but clicking A saves and exits this menu. Then we've got mapping, and here you can map not just the rear buttons, but most of the buttons on the controller, excluding only the home, menu, view, and function buttons. You can only map to default gamepad inputs, so no keyboard mapping options with the Ether. This isn't surprising at all. I wasn't expecting keyboard mapping to be there, but of course it's something that I always want to see. Next, we have turbo, and this is just an on-off setting, so you can enable or disable turbo, again, for most of the inputs on the controller. For triggers, we only have one setting, which is hair trigger mode. You can enable or disable for each trigger. Then lastly, vibration can be set to high, medium, low, or off. Going back to the main menu, we have modes, which lets you manually swap between X input and switch mode. Then we have language, which is pretty self-explanatory. A pair setting, which I'm not going to click on right now because when you do, it just immediately puts it into pairing mode. We have a light tab, which just adjusts the brightness of this screen. I have it turned all the way down now because if I turn it up, it's going to be much harder to capture in video. And finally, an info tab, which shows what firmware version you're on and also has a QR code that will take you to the company website. That text says scan for upgrade and tutorials, but you can actually upgrade the controller through the BigBig Won app. This is the same app used to customize the Blitz 2 controller that we reviewed a couple of months ago, and it does recognize the Ether, but the only thing you can do on this controller in the app is update the firmware. It does show you what firmware you're on, as well as what the latest firmware version is, and clearly mine needs an update, so we'll go ahead and do that. Once the update is complete, the app tells you to reset and calibrate the device, so I've turned it off and back on, and now we'll do the calibration step. To enter calibration mode, hold menu and view for a few seconds, and the screen will change to calibrating. Like most controllers, we'll rotate the sticks 3 to 5 full rotations, then fully depress both triggers 3 or 4 times, and then we'll press menu and view again to exit calibration mode. Let's move on to some testing. We'll start with polling rate and we'll do wired first. We're expecting 1000 hertz, and that's what we're getting, 993 with low jitter, so it looks good. Then we'll also check wireless, which should be the same, and it's close at 940. The jitter is higher in wireless though, and I did run this a few more times and got almost identical results, but it's not bad by any means. We'll also look at resolution using Stick Analyzer, and this is yet again one of those weird results where the program and analog points don't match up, but regardless, the analog points are what we're looking at, and we're getting 430, which is a good result, especially for a budget level gamepad. Lastly, we'll look at Gamepad Tester, and as you can see, the sticks aren't bouncing back to a consistent perfect resting point, but they're very close, and I don't have any drift in game, and this is with the dead zones set to 0. As far as the circularity, these are pretty much a perfect circular algorithm. They do extend a bit in all diagonals, but we've got very even shading, so they look fine. Also, if you notice the triggers, I have hair trigger mode enabled on the right trigger, but not the left. And with most gamepads, hair trigger mode just makes the triggers on-off rather than analog, just like this, but it's a little bit different on the Ether. The big advantage to trigger stops is that they allow you to cut out a large portion of the travel distance of the triggers, and the hair trigger mode on the MOJHON Aether provides a similar advantage in some scenarios. Typically, when you press the trigger to fire a semi-automatic weapon in a game like Call of Duty, you have to then release the trigger and pull it again to fire each subsequent shot. With this hair trigger mode, not only does depressing the trigger any amount register as 100% activation, but releasing the trigger any amount also registers as fully releasing the trigger, which means you don't have to fully activate the trigger each time in scenarios like these. It doesn't completely make up for the lack of trigger stops, but it helps. So conclusions. It's hard to compare the Ether to some of the other controllers I've reviewed recently because it is missing some of the features I personally am looking for in a Pro controller. But in addition to missing trigger stops and a bunch of extra inputs and keyboard mapping, it's also missing the higher price tag. Don't get me wrong, you don't have to drop $200 for a top tier controller. There are some amazing controllers on the market right now, anywhere between 45 and 100 bucks. But you'd be hard pressed to find a controller that will outperform the Ether for $30, much less the $25 you can get it for this week. The Hall effect thumbsticks perform well, as does the D-pad. I actually found it much more accurate for roll-offs than the majority of mechanical D-pads I've used. I also like the design of the D-pad. Not that it's drastically different from a standard four-way, but I just think it looks and feels really good. More than anything though, this is a $30 controller that doesn't feel cheap. The materials feel like good quality. There's no gaps in the case, no flex in the plastic, no loose buttons or inputs. It just feels good. And that's not something I can say about a lot of controllers I've picked up for significantly more money. So long story short, if you gotta have 6 extra buttons, trigger stops, full app customization, and some other bells and whistles, you might have to look elsewhere. But if what you're looking for is a quality pro style controller with Hall effect sticks and 2 rear buttons, MOJHON's Aether may be just what you're looking for, especially if you're trying to not break the bank picking up your next gamepad. I hope this video helped you out, and if so, please subscribe if you haven't already. Likes are also appreciated, and I do try to react and respond to as many comments as possible. I'll be doing more reviews regularly, so I hope to see you back here again soon. Thanks for watching.